Do you want to know how to take your business idea and actually get started in a business of your own? To be able to attract the right customers and clients to your business, people who will value what you do and be happy to pay you? Do you want to be able to get your pricing strategy right? How do you plan to fund your startup? I know you have a ton of questions right now. Listen in, because the So You Want to Start a Business podcast has been made just for you. In this podcast, we are here to tell terrific business stories to help answer all your questions. I am your host, Ingrid Thompson, and I've been running my own business, Healthy Numbers, for almost 20 years. And over that time, I have worked with literally hundreds of people to help them create, start, and grow their own business, successful and thriving businesses. In this podcast, I speak with inspiring entrepreneurs and business owners about what it takes to get a business off the ground, to get started in business, and to continue to be successful. Welcome back to episode number 120 with Delia and Alison Bruhn from The Style That Binds Us. Before we get into the details of this episode, this is our first episode of So You Want to Start a Business podcast for a while, and that's because of what happened with COVID-19. This episode and many of the following episodes were recorded in the early months of 2020. In late March, the Australian government ordered pretty much every business in Australia to close, as well as closing the borders to the outside world. I immediately jumped into my super helper mode to support my clients and as many others to fathom out what was going on at the time. I ran webinars, information sessions to help make sense of what was happening. I thought about adding them to the podcast at the time, and quite frankly, I just couldn't see how it would work, and I just actually didn't really have the time to do it justice. I promise to include some of that in future episodes. My clients' health and wellbeing studios and practices needed to figure out exactly how to get online and fast at the end of March. Fast forward to today, and Australia is easing restrictions. Businesses are finding their way in an uncertain future. We truly do not know what's in store for the second half of 2020. I always knew this was going to be a milestone year. Who knew how much was going to happen? Anyway, I decided it's time to bring back the podcasts with the terrific interviews and conversations with entrepreneurs and business startups. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for your patience as we took a break. I deliberately chose this particular episode as the first to go to air as we rejoined the podcast world, because it is so incredibly full of joy and inspiration and hope. It's a wonderful example of a truly successful partnership. I loved this conversation. We recorded it on video and we had a lot of fun. My apologies, we actually only have the audio here. I truly wish we'd put the video part together. I think you'll love it as well, especially if you are interested in all things business, business startups, in creativity, and women in business. I absolutely struggled to find the one best snippet to add at this part of the show. Anyway, I decided on this one, which is Delia talking about what started happening while she was working at Barney's.
At Barney's and working in fashion. It's intense. It is so intense. And as an assistant at the time when I started the company, I would be thinking creative out of the box, all these ideas, and coming to the team and getting super pumped. And then when you hear no's for whatever reason, so many times, it can be emotionally very upsetting. So I needed a place where I could have my own creative outlet. And also, again, like Mom, you have to pay attention in life. And I've done an IGTV video about this, paying attention to the signs. So whenever someone would hear, if Mom was talking or literally anyone. Oh, Delia, she works at Barney's. She lives in New York. Oh, but they always came up with someone who wanted to work in fashion. Can they talk to Delia? Well, Delia is sitting in New York eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner at her desk. I am happy to talk to them, but I don't have a lot of time. And I felt that they might be thinking, oh, fashion, that sounds like a fun thing to do, when really it takes a certain personality. And I did not just start at Barney's, my first job, just because I applied online. Like, that was a year and a half or 2 years in the making.
Maybe some of you listening know that feeling, that when you make suggestions and all you hear is no, 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 and you start to think about creative ways that you can use these ideas, and you start to think about a side hustle. And maybe that's what you're listening to this reason that you're listening to this podcast, because that's what Delia did. This interview conversation is a wonderful discussion with two fabulous businesswomen, Delia and her business partner, Alison Bruhn. They are generous and they are the truly living embodiment of their business. This is now the 5th interview with business partners, which is actually not so many across 120 episodes. Business partnerships can be pretty tricky, and this is an extremely successful partnership, is living proof that partnerships can work. Our previous guests, episode 1 with Adam Franklin, episode 4 with Sally and Mena, more recently 103 with Manny and James, and the most recent episode 119 with the two founders, Emily and Justin from Root and River. I truly think you're going to love this interview conversation. Listen out for Alison's point where she knew she was in business and how she felt about people talking about her having a little business. How many times do we refer to what we're doing as our little business? As always, there's no advertising on this podcast apart from me and my book and my guests. This episode is brought to you by my book with the same name as the podcast. So you want to start a business, head over to wherever you buy your books online for Kindle or the physical book. For those who like to listen, the audio version is around episode 70, 80, cycle back through those, and you can listen on the podcast. I want to say a thank you for a review on iTunes. And I truly appreciate reviews. So if you feel like leaving us a review, I would truly appreciate that. Thank you, Cherie Passion, for leaving this review. Insightful. As a startup business, this podcast provides wonderful advice, insight, and information for those who have come out the other side. Wow, thank you so much. If you're loving the conversations, head over to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts and leave us a review. Anyway, enough now from me. This has been a little bit longer introduction than usual. Let's listen to what Delia and Alison have to say about starting and running their own business, and truly so much more. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, and here we are today with Delia Folk and Alison Bruhn, and it's a wonderful opportunity to hear about a partnership and a successful partnership in business. So, Delia, where in the world are you right now?
I am in Manhattan.
Oh, my favourite place in the whole world, honestly. I just love New York. And Alison, where are you?
I am in Alabama, right down near Florida, in the United States.
And it's tomorrow where you are, and it's today where I am here in Sydney. So tell us, ladies, what is your business? What business are you in?
So our business is called The Style That Binds Us, which is a lifestyle brand and community for women who want to live a stylish and fearless life. I was on the buying team at Barney's for 4 years. I worked in beauty, ready-to-wear, and jewelry. Before that, I interned at Versace. And then my mom, Alison, is a wardrobe consultant and stylist. And so we came together, and we will talk about that today. And we created a fashion ecosystem with this 360-degree approach, which is definitely a new way of looking at the fashion industry and business. And so we have the consulting. So I took my experience from Barney's working with emerging brands, and now I continue to do that, and I help them navigate wholesale, so getting into stores, and then also being creative with direct to consumer. And then mom has style consulting. So she works with women in their closets, closet edit, packing for trips, special occasion dressing, all sorts of things, shopping for you. And then we have content. So we have a YouTube channel and a podcast, Instagram, all of the social media. So we are helping both women in our audience get dressed, learn about new brands, but also we're supporting the designer because they're getting brand awareness and sales because our website has commerce, and the whole thing is a community. It truly is about supporting each other.
Oh, what a beautiful pitch for your business and a description of what you do. So right now, I know that if a listener is listening and is your ideal client, they are going to want to know right now how to tap into you. So what's the very best place that you would send them first? Let's just shamelessly promote you here right now. We have no advertising on this podcast except you and me. So yeah, no annoying advertising. So please just tell us, what would you say to someone who's listening? Where would you send them to right now?
You're so sweet. Thank you so much. So everything is called The Style That Binds Us. So we have a website, thestylethatbindsus.com, YouTube channel and podcast, Instagram, all of that is under The Style That Binds Us.
So beautiful. Thank you so much, Delia. Okay, so you have this history of working in the retail and commerce. And when did you get started in this business together? How long has this been going?
Yes, The Style That Binds Us was born. We're about to be 2 years. So April 2018 is when we actually formed the business. Before, we each had our own blogs while I was still working at Barney's. And then when we combined, The Style That Binds Us was born then.
So 2 years in. And why did you think it was a good idea to bring what you were both doing together? I mean, you kind of answered that, but it's what is it about what you do that makes it work better when it's together?
Well, I don't know if we've mentioned the fact that we're mother and daughter yet, but we are. And I was working with personal clients, and sometimes Delia would introduce me to new brands and designers through her business. And then I would bring them back to my clients, which would excite them because they were tired of the same old thing. A lot of my clients are in smaller communities, so they're not exposed to a lot of, variety. That was exciting for them. It was exciting for the designers and the brands to feel like they were reaching a new market. So we were already kind of working together organically. But the thing that really triggered me, and I think us, is that we could reach more women. So my goal has always been to give women as much information as I can give them and to pump them up and to inspire them. And I do that one-on-one. I have clients all over the United States, but you can only reach so many people. And I knew from what I was hearing with each of these women, it didn't matter if they lived in Connecticut or California or Alabama, they were all having the same questions, and wondering about the same things and feeling the same disappointments and everything. So we started talking about how, we could write, we were both writing blog posts already, but we could take it a step further and create a YouTube channel so that to explain to somebody how a good way to wear a motorcycle jacket at 50, it's much better to make a video, obviously. Yes. It would take so many words and they would still be guessing, and pictures, are fine, but it's just so much better in a video. And also we could do it with both of us so that we would be reaching lots of different ages and different style aesthetics, because Delia, the way she puts together a leather jacket might be completely different than the way I would put it together. So you're watching and you're like, oh, well, I can do this at 50 or 40 or 30, or some people might be like, well, I like what Delia's wearing, but I think I could do it at 50, and vice versa. And so we could reach all these women and they could literally watch a video, especially the tutorial videos, and say, oh, okay, I like that look. Let me pause the video and go look in my closet. And they realize, well, I've got this and this. All I would need is this one new piece that I could order to create that look, and things like that. And so as we did it, it was an interesting time because, the Me Too movement was starting, and this discussion about price equality, salaries and everything for women, and also inclusivity. And our whole philosophy was about, after Delia being at Barney's, which was such a fabulous store, but it was also the height of the fashion world. And so the idea that, you know, we're so cool that most people aren't invited, we wanted to say, you know what, you are. And that's what I was always telling my personal clients. You can do this too. If I can do it, you can do it. And once you start doing it, you're going to feel better and better about yourself. And then it becomes this place of joy. So we wanted to be a source for information and entertainment, but also inspiration, where people felt safe with us, women especially, could come. And we wanted to create this community where people would engage with us, and they would feel, you know, they weren't just looking at something from the outside and thinking, oh, I wish. They were jumping on the bandwagon and, you know, wanting to share all of this with us. So it just grew organically. And then people said, well, would you do an event with us? A brand would do it. So we're like, well, why not? And then the question would be, when are we going to do the next one? And so it's just grown into this community of, you know, everyone can live a stylish and fearless life. It doesn't matter what color you are, what age you are, what size you are. It's all inside.
Oh, I love that. Everyone can live a style and fearless life. I think that's so lovely. But I love what you say there, Alison, because there's a couple of things I'd just like to pick out, is that you listened to the same questions coming up over and over. And so that helps us when we're starting a business. That's what is the secret to a business, is what are the questions that are coming up over and over? And do I have the answer? And do I have an answer that's a bit different to what everybody else is doing? So how can I stand out? And I think what you two have created is something that is quite unique. And I love what you said there about when somebody says, would you do an event? And you go, well, why not? Maybe you didn't know how to do it, but you just jump in and you, yeah, fantastic. It's a beautiful, beautiful answer. Thank you. So that's what you were doing for the clients, creating this stylish and fearless life for women. What did you want from the business? So, like, what was the business going to give the two of you for, like, why be in business and together?
Well, you know, one reason to be in business together is because she is grown and she lives in New York, and I'm back and forth to New York a lot usually. But also it's a chance to get to you know, to be together more, and we share the same interests and passions. And so it's like friends going into business, and it's a family going into business. And that idea really resonated with me, but I wanted to be careful about that, because you can't ride on that. You know, that can't be the whole reason why you're creating a company.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to do this for me, because I get so much out of supporting other women. I really can't tell you how much that means. It's almost like the styling and the all of the things that center around the idea of fashion and style are one level, but when you take it to the next level where you're actually changing people's lives, that's amazing.
It is.
That really is.
There's nothing quite like that feeling, is there?
No, there's not.
Now, here's a business-focused question. There was a point in this last 2 years, and I imagine there has been, when the business felt real and you went, okay, we're in business now. Is there a moment that you can recall, and is it the same for both of you, when you went, okay, we're in business?
Well, for me, it was interesting. The great thing about working with your daughter too, it's good advice, I feel like, for people that are going to start a business, that they surround themselves with people that believe in them. And Delia is very much a go-getter. So I, just like my clients, have sort of gotten beaten up over the years, you know, and lost a little bit of self-confidence sometimes. And she would always ask me, but why can't you? You know, I don't understand why you can't. Of course you can. So when I first started my business, I was 50 years old, and I started my wardrobe consulting business. I never really thought about the fact that I was 50, but I did hear my husband say things like, oh, Alison has this little business and it's going to be a tax write-off, and other people has your little business, you know, this kind of thing. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. And I took it as a challenge. I was like, I will show these people. So for Delia and me, you know, when I would hear people say, oh, that's nice, I guess you make enough money so you can travel and go do all these fabulous things y'all are doing, but it's not really like where you're going to actually make money or anything, right? You know, and so we are less than 2 years old, and what we have done in that short amount of time, we are very proud of. And now I have people, family, friends, everyone, accountants who don't call it our little business anymore. And that's when I knew, you know, it was a real thing.
When they stop talking about, I have to say,
Yeah.
you know, it's that kind of just a mum or just a housewife or little business.
Exactly.
You know, it drives me insane when I hear someone saying my little business. And a side hustle is different to a little business. I think side hustle can actually be a big business. So again, that's, you know, it's, yeah. So I love that answer. That's your little business. But I love what you said there about surround yourself with people who believe in you. And that is so important in business. You know, if you don't have people around you that aren't go-getters like Delia, and, you know, to have had an internship at Versace and to be working at Barney's, you know, Delia, you are absolutely, you know, clearly you are able to do that, make those things happen. So was there a moment when you felt like you were in business, Delia? Is it different, or like, do you have a moment?
I feel like for me, from the beginning, it was. I mean, it has to be as an entrepreneur. If you don't feel some way and act some way, then no one else is. So if I was going to present it just like, oh, you know, it's something I do on the side, and I kind of like, when you're speaking to someone, if you talk about it like, you know, it doesn't matter how much, if you make no income and right now you're just spending the money and then later the income will come. If you're like sweeping it under the rug, oh, you know, I have this thing, the Style That Binds Us, we have this YouTube channel, you know, whatever. But if you approach it like, I have created a company, it's called The Style That Binds Us, and it's with my mom, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I think hopefully, Bibi, you can tell me if not, but I think that I decided that it was real from day one. And
absolutely.
Is that
I love that.
Okay.
I love that. And
absolutely.
Alison, yeah, sorry, I talked over you there. Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. Okay, so you already had some customers, Alison, because you were doing the work that you were doing. And Delia, you had a blog. You both had blogs. Where did you find your customers? Like, there's someone who says to you, would you do an event? You know, how do you find customers then? How do you find customers now? So over the 2 years, where did people come from?
So many places. So Delia, sometimes I talk in third person, which is a little bit weird, but whatever. So coming from the South, I didn't know anybody in New York in the fashion industry. I knew one person. And so I had to create a network. So I have been voraciously networking since I decided I was going to move to New York and work in fashion. I just came up with that. I'm not really sure the exact time, date, or whatever, but I had to make that happen. So it's been so fascinating how over the course of working at Barney's and when I created my blog, so the reason I started the business was with DeliaFolk.com was because at Barney's and working in fashion, it's intense. It is so intense. And as an assistant at the time when I started the company I would be thinking creative out of the box, all these ideas, and coming to the team and getting super pumped. And then when you hear no's for whatever reason, so many times it can be emotionally very upsetting. So I needed a place where I could have my own creative outlet. And also, again, like Mom, you have to pay attention in life. And I've done an IGTV video about this, paying attention to the signs. So whenever someone would hear, you know, if Mom was talking or literally anyone, oh, you know, Delia, she works at Barney's, she lives in New York. Oh, well, they always came up with someone who wanted to work in fashion. Can they talk to Delia? Well, Delia is sitting in New York eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner at her desk. I am happy to talk to them, but I don't have a lot of time. And I felt that they might be thinking, oh, fashion, that sounds like a fun thing to do, when really it takes a certain personality. And I did not just start at Barney's, my first job, just because I applied online. Like, that was a year and a half or 2 years in the making. So I wanted to have a place where I could talk about how I got into fashion. What is it like when you're in it? So I broke down a lot of things about the industry. And again, like kind of the basis of what the Style That Binds Us was, like pulling back the curtain. This is how the calendar works. What does it mean to be an editor versus work and buying? Because when I was going to start in fashion, how was I supposed to know what that was? Because in 2012, 2013, whenever that was, there wasn't a guide. So it has been basically what I'm trying to say is from day one, I've created a lot of content about like, how can you be the best assistant you can be? How can you stand out at work? So I made myself known, hopefully not in an obnoxious way. The Southern accent probably helps, but people definitely knew me at the company. Like 4 or 5 years later, all of the people that I met at Barney's during that time when I was networking, that's all come back around, and we're hosting events with them, and they're on our podcast or YouTube channel, or we're partnering with their company, things like that. So we are so thankful that, so either, let's see, how do they find us? Either they find us or we find them. So Instagram is huge. Mom Styling was definitely word of mouth. And it's like, one person, then they enjoy the experience and then they tell someone else. So that's how that happens. For my brand consulting, I've spoken at conferences and people knew me from the Barney's days, or I find people on LinkedIn or Instagram. So that is how we find. And
That's a beautiful answer. It's so gorgeous. I have to say, we're doing this on video, but we're not actually using the video. And I'm actually really sorry we're not using the video, because every time you're talking, I keep thinking of that movie with Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway. And I don't know, Delia, if anyone has ever said to you that you have a bit of an Anne Hathaway look about you. And, she somehow made this whole thing glamorous. But anybody that's worked hard knows that when you say you're sitting in New York at your desk eating your breakfast, lunch and dinner, you seriously are. And I think the Anne Hathaway character in that movie, which is called The Devil Wears Prada, is that what your life was like? It was kind of glamorous, but at the same time excruciatingly difficult. No time for friends, no time for anything else.
Well, okay, so I didn't work at magazines, and that's
no, I know it was in
right.
But it's still that intensity, the seasons, the high end, the pressure, and it doesn't just happen. There's a lot of people in there who have got a lot of targets to meet, and I can imagine from a retail point of view, like you had different demands, like sales targets and how many items and how much money, and it would have been I'm sure it was a very stressful time. But I just think that's amazing that you took that and turned that into something that was so valuable. Yeah, you're a go-getter. That's you. Ugh. All right. So I was going to ask you about viability and did you crunch some numbers to see how this was going to work? But it sounds to me like you pretty much knew this was going to work. It was just going to work. So how do you figure out pricing? Can we talk a little bit about, you don't have to tell us exactly what you charge for things, but like, how do you figure out how to make money from this? Like, because it's such a unique thing. And often that's one of the struggles that people have, is they've got this idea for a business, and people listening, this is who we're talking to, either getting started or seeing a gap. And, we're talking at a time in 2020 when things are a bit different and there's so much opportunity out there. But how do we get a pricing model for something kind of unique like yours? What was your thinking to it? Not so much how much, but what's the thinking for that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, crunching numbers, I wish. I am really determined to learn finance and all of that. Coming from the South, unfortunately, that is not something that I was surrounded by or taught or anything. So I'm really, really trying here from the basics. So we did not crunch numbers. With my personality, if there's a will, there's a way. And I think when Mom wants something, then she figures out how to make it happen. So I decided that I was going to start a YouTube channel and podcast. And I didn't sit there and come up with limitations for myself and say oh, what's going to cost. I promise I did not put together any sort of spreadsheet. So we just did it. We, for better or for worse, that's probably not the best strategy for anyone. Please crunch the numbers and create a spreadsheet. Please do that. But the process of pricing. So for the consulting, it's a lot about figuring out our expertise. So, I have just spent 4 years at one of the top retailers in the world. And then Mom went to FIT. So she understands the science behind dressing. So we have spent time and money preparing ourselves and getting experience. So keeping that in mind, keeping in mind how much time we're spending, and then also keeping in mind what competitors in the same city are paying and then are charging. And then we just launched our first product. So that is the Style That Finds Us mug, because it is a symbol of community and togetherness. So we can all start the day together, and we challenge you to think about how are you going to live a stylish and fearless life. Take a moment to yourself, set your mindset for the day, feel the liquid beneath your fingers, take a deep breath, and it's like we're there enveloping you in a hug, saying, and I'm giving you a pep talk, go out into the world and take everything that comes your way. You can do this, be strong. And so the pricing on that, so thankfully coming from Barney's, I understand how to price a product and make sure there's a margin. And I also help my emerging brands consulting clients do that too.
Yeah. So there's
a spreadsheet. We did have a spreadsheet for the mug, but the mug price have come so far.
That's good. And Alison, when you started doing the styling back when, have you seen an evolution in what people can pay, what you can charge, can you talk a little bit about pricing for that kind of a service? Because a lot of people listening have a service and, it's kind of nebulous. And I take what Delia's saying about your experience and your knowledge and your reach and your continued interest in all things fashion around the world and locally. So how do you figure out pricing?
Well, one thing I wanted to tell people too is that I'm really glad that my business partner had worked in corporate before. She had dealt with the hierarchy. She had dealt with numbers. She had learned that the people above you are going to be stressed, and that's going to trickle down to you, and not to take it personally. And, there's just so much that you learn when you aren't getting people listening to your question, when you have these great ideas and they're not listening, because it really makes you get more and more determined, and then by the time you're ready to go out on your own, you can put those things into use. But as far as pricing, it's hard because, number one, I always wanted to make sure people were always encouraging me to have higher prices per hour, but I wanted to make sure that there was enough money for my clients to be able to buy the pieces that I was suggesting that they needed to bring into the wardrobe so that we could really build this core wardrobe. So that was one thing I always kept in mind. The other thing is, you need to find out what other people are making, which is extremely difficult, because they're your competition. So it's really hard to find out what the other people in your community are charging. And then it's hard to find out, like in other parts of the country, like what are the New York stylists charging? Obviously, it's going to be the same, a little different. And also, but anyway, you have to make connections there too. You have to have some people that are in the industry or that have gone to other stylists before that you can say, or like someone that interns for you that had interned for another stylist, and you can say, what were they charging per hour? And that's really important, because you can be super low, and that's sometimes if your prices are too low, people don't respect you as much. They think, oh, well, for some reason she's really low. So,
and I think the thing about low pricing is it's that cycle, isn't it? Is that if we don't charge enough and then we do the work and then we go, I feel really bad about doing the work for this low price. And then you kind of get a resentment towards what you're doing. And maybe, I'm not saying you would, but maybe somebody might say, well, if they're only paying that, I'm only going to do this much. And so you get this cycle of the person doesn't get the true value, because it takes a really certain mindset to be able to say, even though I'm only getting this much, I'm going to still give my 100, 200% to this client.
Absolutely.
So, that's that horrible cycle. So then you feel bad, and then you don't do the service, and then you don't get the reviews, or you don't get the results. And then, so you can't charge as much because now and I think people men and women, but women perhaps more than men, get into this cycle of, and then there's a race to the bottom. There's this sort of, oh, they're charging this, so I'll charge that, and then I'll go one under, and I'll go one under. And, we see
That's
that
right.
in different industries at different times. There's this kind of race, what I call a race to the bottom, which, like, we'll do this as a discount. We'll give you this many weeks for free.
Oh, sure.
I'm not saying you would do what you do for free, but
no, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And some people do, like, for $1,000, you get 2 outfits and, a closet edit or whatever. But I've never done packages either, because I really feel like in order to set yourself apart, you really have to pay attention to each person in a different way. Each person has a different issue. They have a different lifestyle. And, someone would say to me, well, I worked with this other stylist, and she said the first thing she said to me was, I had to get a graphic t-shirt. She said, I'm not a graphic t-shirt kind of girl, and so that's just like, okay, that's on trend right now. So that's an easy fix. That's not the way to run a successful business. And I also think people said, well, if you say, well, some people can't afford my services, then, well, you can have more people maybe who will not be able to be repeat customers, and you can, make money that way, but it might be a little bit harder. Or you can not work for everybody, only work for the people that can afford the service, and they will probably be ones that come back for the seasonal updates and want to be packed for trips and want to plan out that when their children get married, or when they get married, you do that whole service too, and it becomes a really a true relationship.
Yeah.
And so that's where I am. But it is very difficult. It is.
Yeah, it is. It can be quite tricky getting that pricing right, but I think it's important that people feel good about the pricing. Okay, Delia, did you want to say anything about pricing? Anything else, or are we?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yes, with pricing, I think women have a hard time speaking about pricing, especially Southern women. And Mom and I both read a book called Alter Ego. And this is another thing about tone of voice and carrying yourself and all of that. Like, for example, when you're speaking to a prospective client, being confident. When they say, oh, do you have any other questions? Oh, well, I'd love to learn about your prices. Say them. Do not, oh, well, it's him and haw. This is the price. I believe in myself. I am worth this. Because if you don't think you're worth it, they're going to sense that and they're going to feel it. So Alter Ego is a great book because it can take you outside of yourself. It's not you talking, it's your alter ego.
Which is why you talk in the third person when you say you talk about Delia as the third person. All right, we'll put that link. I'll put it on my reading list. I don't think I'm not sure if I think I haven't read that one.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Todd Herman. Yeah.
Herman.
Beyonce has Sasha Fierce. All these very, very successful people have an alter ego. So that's a great thing to do.
It is a good thing to do. And it's probably taps into that idea, because quite often we hear people saying, I can sell other people's things, but when it comes to myself, it's why you can represent those new emerging designers, whereas they're so attached to their products and what they've created that it's very difficult for them to be that third person. So I can totally understand why that works. All right, here's my magic wand question. So if you had a magic wand and you could go back to 2 years ago, April 2018, is there anything you might have done differently back, like as you got started, as you got going? Is there anything you might have done differently? And not in a bad way, but just like
Yeah. It's really corny, but I don't think there is. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I'm not saying that we might have done some things differently, but what I'm saying is everything we believe sort of happens for a reason. And as long as you're listening and you're flexible and you take these things as they come, that, like these events that have become this big part of our business, we're not in the playbook for us. We never considered doing that because we wanted to reach all these women, digitally or whatever. And then these events have become a big part. So if we hadn't said, well, okay, I guess we're veering off, but we'll give it a shot. You have to be open to that. And you learn from I don't even want to call them mistakes, things that didn't go so well. The only thing might be like, you wish that you had a magic wand that someone would say, this is where you're going to put your money. Get this person as a coach. Get this person, do this. Oh, don't do that. You know, some people that we know about, pay a bunch of money and try and buy followers for social media. Well, that is not a good idea. Yeah. And so we didn't go down that road because we had already heard other people saying, well, and obviously the style that binds us is all about authenticity and community. So buying followers would not work for us anyway. No. But, Delia, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think we definitely would not. There's nothing, you just have to take the challenges as they come. And I can't live with, I was listening on my walk today, je ne regrette rien. I regret nothing. I mean, you do what you think is best. You make the best decision in that moment. And as an entrepreneur, you don't know. There's no one to tell you. You don't have that crystal ball. So you decide. And when Mom and I are going back and forth, it drives me crazy. And I say, we're making a decision and we're going to not spend 20 more minutes on this. And we're going to see how it goes. And then you evaluate and pivot and whatever.
Yeah, I love that. And you've Alison, you've sort of answered the next question as well. If there's somebody could have told you something from the start. So you alluded there to, if somebody could have told you to get a coach, if somebody could have told you. So what is some of that, if somebody could have told you that you would have liked to know?
Well, even the things that were crazy, like I think that we already had blog posts by ourselves and and then we added and Delia already had a podcast, and then we added the YouTube channel because we wanted to be able to show things visually. So, we look up and I'm like, Delia, we have a podcast, a YouTube channel. We have newsletters to get out. We have blog posts. We have clients. We have social media. I mean, how do we do all of this, But by that time, you couldn't pick one. I kept saying, is there one that we could wait on? Like we could just put it on hold and there really wasn't one. So I think the advice I would have again is have someone, like if I am someone, which I am, that not overthinks, but I do go back and forth, following it to the end. Well, this could happen. This could happen. And Delia is more like, we've talked about this enough. And she also has to remind me, like if I said, oh, I feel like we don't have enough people coming to the event, or whatever it is. She's like, Mom, here's the list. You haven't seen the people that have signed up. Oh, okay. She always reassures me, and it bugs her when I doubt, and I worry. And every single time that any of these things happen that I'm worried about, now I know, first of all, the worst thing that could happen is no one showed up, which I'm always way beyond surprised at the positive response that happens. They're always calling and saying, when are we going to have another one with you? So I have gotten so much from Delia of this belief in yourself. There is no option to question once you've made the decision, we're going to make it happen. Yeah. And so that would be my advice about, you're going to make mistakes, but if you do not have a partner, because a lot of people say, oh, I wish I had someone to bounce off my ideas with and everything, then you need to find a coach, or you need to find someone that will tell you the truth. And this is tricky, but a lot of times friends and family who didn't go to FIT, who didn't work at Barney's, who's never written a blog post, they have a lot of feedback they want to give you. And sometimes it comes, you have to sort of step back and think, where is this coming from? And realize sometimes they're not getting to see you as much, or they wish they had started a company at 50 or whatever it is. And so you have to weigh all of that and not be angry with them, but just realize, what, and that there again, Delia was the one, she would say, they don't know what they're talking about. They're not, we don't dislike them because of it now, but you have to decide what feedback is going to be feedback that you can actually internalize, and don't let, sometimes Delia would get some feedback and I'd be like, oh, that was horrible that they said that to you, and she'd say, no, all they were saying was this, and this is good to know going forward. Yeah. So I think that's very important, to find someone, whether you have to hire them or you pay them as a as an assistant or whatever it is. Find someone to take the journey with you, but they really have to have some skin in the game, and they have to believe in it too.
Yeah. Love that. Thank you, Alison. Delia, talk to me a little bit about that feedback that Alison just said there about, because one of my questions is, where do you get good feedback? And, like you said, the friends and family, they've got other stuff going on around what that feedback is. So where does the valuable feedback come from?
Oh my gosh, everywhere. So my idea is, let's not reinvent the wheel.
Yes.
We have an audience that we can ask questions to. And if I'm struggling, I love our audience, because when I need something and when they need something, we're there for each other. Like when I need energy and I'm feeling sad or whatever, they're there like pumping me up, whatever, messaging me, oh, I love watching your stories or whatever. And that is very reinforcing and helps me carry on and gives me the energy. So we'll ask them questions. You have all these people baked in, so let's pay attention to that. So feedback, let's see, as a business, like for a brand, for example, something that you have, and for your business in general, you take all the feedback and then think about it. So for example, if you're a brand, you go to market and the buyers tell you, well, you're like a minimalist brand. Well, floral is everywhere this season. We would really love to see florals from you. Well, you have to make a decision, and you need to be confident and strong in your brand and say, well, we're not a floral brand. Thank you for that feedback. I value your opinion, but maybe we're not going to go in that direction. So feedback, this is my bar trick, which is hysterical, of just typical my personality. But wherever I am, when I'm out and about with people, I am always asking them questions, and they're probably like, Delia, can we not talk about so-and-so? But I'll have like my questions, like, what are your favorite websites to shop? What are your favorite newsletters to read, or whatever? So what brands do you wear? What podcasts do you listen to? I'm always trying to get feedback. And whenever I have touch bases, okay, I call them touch. I am trying to improve my business speak. So it's hard for me to become, what is the word? Phoebe, what is the word?
I know what you're saying. The word when you use the correct business terminology.
Anyway, so instead of a touch base, when I'm catching up with friends, I always ask them.
Oh, yeah.
Because like people who are actually our followers, who understand our business, I'm always asking them, what do you think about our content? Where can we improve? Or our followers just give us feedback without asking, hey, you probably shouldn't talk about that in this way or whatever. So then you can decide, okay, am I going to take that feedback? How do I need to tweak or whatever? So feedback comes from everywhere, whether you definitely should ask about it. I think we must, as people, and especially entrepreneurs, we have to be able to take feedback and criticism, whether it's constructive or not.
Yeah, it's totally, and I think there's that ability, as you said about the third person earlier, to be able to stand aside from it and say, well, this is helpful, and what am I going to do with this information, and how does that impact my business? Okay, so we're getting a sense of who you are and the sort of attributes that you have that make you successful. So Delia, 3 characteristics that you have, and our listening audience can't see you right now because I can, and now I really do wish we were using them, making this. But if you go to Instagram, if you go to the YouTube channel, you can see just what a lot of personality Delia has, and Alison as well. But what are your 3 characteristics that make you successful in business?
Meticulous, determined, and persistent.
Oh, very nice. Meticulous, determined, and persistent. Beautiful. Alison, what are your 3?
Empathetic, a can-do attitude, and not letting age slow me down. Like I said before, I didn't think it was unusual to start a business at 50 until people kept saying, I can't believe you've done this, or you so inspired me to do that. Or, I just thought, I guess you just have to, your age is irrelevant. It's how you feel, about yourself. So I didn't ever even consider the fact. I don't even know what that means. How did you start a business at 50? You know what I'm saying? I just started a business.
Yeah.
So,
It wasn't a factor.
Yes.
It's interesting you say that, because I interviewed Anne McEwen. She's a wonderful Scottish woman who's based here in Sydney, and she has been doing coaching and life coaching and business coaching for some period of time, and she's now specializing and focusing on working with women over 50 wanting to start a business. So it's actually because that's what she did. She'd got the point where the girls had left school, left home. She was, and her husband, like they were financially well off, but they were comfortable, but she just figured, like, what am I going to do with myself now? And so that's what she does. She actually, and that's part of how she's branded herself, is she actually talks about, women of a certain age are ready to start a business. And I love what you said there about empathy, because I think in your business, that you're working one-on-one with people, and style is a very sensitive topic for a lot of women, how they look, how they feel, understanding. So that empathy it's really an important aspect of the service you provide. All right, so as we come to a close, this has been the most gorgeous conversation, ladies. Thank you. So someone comes along to you, and you've sort of talked about this a few times, but I just want it in a nutshell sentence each. They've got an idea for a business. It doesn't matter what business it is. They come to you and they go, man, you've got this business going. I want to have my own business. I've got this great idea. What do you say to them?
Delia?
Well, I mean, what is the business idea? And so is it like advice that we're giving them, or?
Well, someone just says, oh, you seem to be having a great time having your own business. I wish I had my own business. I've got this idea. I've always had this idea for a business. What would advice, or how would you encourage them or discourage them? What might you say to them?
Yeah, I think talking out the idea, and then kind of maybe talking about the steps that they're going to take in order to make that happen, and also making sure that it doesn't already exist, because sometimes you have an idea and you didn't realize that it does already exist. And also making sure, what is your reason? So I guess a big thing is, like, when you start a business, you must have a mission statement. And everything you do has to be through that lens, and you have to live and breathe and believe that. You always have to come back to that why. So every single newsletter we write, every YouTube, like, for example, we don't consider ourselves influencers, even though we have Instagram and everything. We would never post, oh, look at me, I'm in Paris and I have a fabulous outfit on. That is great content, and there's a place for that. But for our business, it's all about, oh my gosh, we just learned about this, the most incredible brand, restaurant, museum, exhibit, whatever, and here are all the things you need to know about it. So everything that we do is the mission of helping women to live a stylish and fearless life. So that I am really surprised about when I talk to people and they have a business, and I'm like, well, why do you have a business? Why does your brand need to exist? Like, they have a jewelry brand or something, and they're like fumbling around with the words. It's a company for unique basics or whatever. I don't know. It's like, that's not it. So
they've got to have something to keep them going.
Right. Absolutely. You have to be passionate about it. You have to jump out of bed in the morning and get excited. Yeah. It cannot be just like, oh, I want to be rich and famous. Like, it has to be, the reason that you want to start this has to be authentic.
Yeah. And I think, we're using Zoom to do this call. And I love the story about Zoom getting started. It was him and his girlfriend were living far apart, and they wanted to create something that would give them this sense of, I know you really like the togetherness that you get when you're in Zoom. The fact that he's gone on to be a billionaire is beside the point. But 10 years ago, that wasn't, like, he may have thought it would be nice to develop something that made him a lot of money. But his their motto, their brand, their logo, their mission, their everything is bringing happiness to people. And I think the fact that Zoom is such beautiful quality, it brings an enormous amount of happiness to the relationships of people. So
it certainly does. And he didn't start it out to make a bunch of money.
No.
And so that's the thing too. Number one, don't quit your day job. Because you have to have enough money to be able to exist, to survive. And definitely, like Delia said, have that mission statement. And you have to realize, especially as an entrepreneur, it's like you've had a child. You have to live and breathe this thing you have birthed. You have to realize it is going to be 24/7. It is going to take every ounce of your body, especially if you work with a 28-year-old. It is exhausting, but it has to mean the world to you. And there's just it's not for sissies. It's not like, oh, let's start a business, it'll still be fun. There are some fun times, there are some glamorous times, but there are so many hard times, and that's what makes the fun times much more fun. I always hear people talk about when the hardest part is in the beginning, and people, when they look back on their businesses and they've made it, those are the times that mean the most to them, is these early days of the blood, sweat, and tears that you have to give. And it's like with Delia, we reached some accomplishment, and I'm really excited. I'm like, "Ooh, now we can go out and celebrate." She's like, "Oh no, tomorrow we have to start on so-and-so." It's like, it's never ending. I mean, it's like, you can't stop. You never reach a point where you're like, "Okay, we're done. This is great. Let's just, sit around and enjoy it." So you really, really, really have to know before you make this decision, give that thought, create a mission statement, some sort of basic business plan, and know that it is going to be harder and take more time even than you can imagine when you think it's going to take a lot of time.
Oh, I love that. Music to my ears. Sorry, Alison, I love that. There you go. What were you going to add to that?
When you just said somebody, I can't remember, I think maybe it was I don't know, but about Zoom taking 10 years, it literally takes time, and there is nothing that you can do to make it not take time. And so people, which is hysterical. One time I was in an elevator, and we were coming down from Hudson Yards from the new Neiman's, and they were like, there's this new brand called Loewe, and they're this like leather goods brand or whatever. I'm like, "Ma'am, this has been around since the 1800s. Just because it's new to you doesn't mean that it's a new brand." So Zoom, maybe all these people during this whole quarantine, maybe Zoom, they probably think is some startup. This person, they have been working on this for 10 years, and they're just now trending. So we must remember that in the thick and the trenches of each and every day, knowing and trusting that we have a valid business, and we are patient in that, even though it's very challenging to do so.
It can be. It can be. And yeah, it certainly is. I just love that. Thank you. I love that. There's nothing you can do to not take time. It just really, it's beautiful. Okay, so just as we wrap up, because I've really enjoyed our conversation, thank you so much for so much of your time. And it's always tricky to get the three-way conversation, but I think we've done it really well. Just any last little gem that you'd like to hand out to anybody before we go? Alison, a last little gem from you?
My gem is that you have to be generous in spirit. You cannot be jealous of other people. You need to stay in your lane, and you need to wish the best for other people. Anybody that is the leader of a company that is mean-spirited or exclusionary, I'm not even sure if that's a word, it's not going to come back to them. So, that is be generous in spirit and be kind.
I love that. And you know what? There's plenty for everyone. There's plenty of pie for everyone. I think
that's right.
It's an abundant universe we live in, and
it is. But sometimes it's easier said than done.
Oh yeah,
it's a human thing to look and go, well, why did that happen to them?
Yeah,
why did they get that? Or whatever it is. And you have to go, stop that.
Yep.
Exactly.
Stay in your lane.
If you do, I guess what I'm saying is, if you do that, sometimes just know that's normal. That's okay. But pull back. Remember your mission. Remember why you're doing this, and be generous.
Wonderful. Thank you. Delia, what's your parting gem?
This is something that I truly struggle with every single day, but it is that your plan, it's not your plan. It's not on your timeline. You have to trust. Things will happen or not happen when they are supposed to happen. So, for example, starting the Style That Binds Us, Delia had decided it was going to launch November 2017. It launched April 2018. I cannot even imagine how that happened. And as this type A personality that I am, I was not totally okay with that. But one of the things as an entrepreneur that you have to learn is to go with the flow and take things as they come. And we cannot plan out. At Barney's, I had my schedule, my certain days that I could take off, and my whole year was planned. We have no plan, because opportunities arise and you have to jump on a plane the next day because someone asked you to be on TV or whatever. So learning to live in the beautiful chaos. But please, you must remember that things may or may not happen, and the things that are supposed to happen will happen. But it's very challenging to remember that. It's like,
it is.
I'm 28 and single, and I'm, when am I get married and have kids? We are unsure.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Of course it is, Delia. It sure will. In its own timeline. Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
And that my timeline maybe would have not.
Well, and you know what? So the timeline is that the Style That Binds may never have happened if,
exactly.
And all those women that are stylish and fearless, that's what you've created. And then there's other things going forward. Yeah, beautiful.
That's right.
Thank you so much.
Oh, we loved it. Thank you for having us.
Lovely.
Thank you so much for listening to another wonderful episode of So You Want to Start a Business podcast. What are your standout moments? Of course, those of you who have been listening for a while know how much I agree with what Delia had to say about having a mission, and that is just what makes you leap out of bed in the morning. There's so much to take from both Delia and Alison, and I love what Delia says about crunching the numbers. I wish. And then she goes on to recommend that everyone else please crunch the numbers. Their pricing model is very considered despite their comments about crunching numbers. They've been incredibly successful, and they do what they do really well. And I love what Alison was saying about really building relationships with people because they come back. So, figuring out what is your price, who is your client, and maybe not everybody is your clients. Interesting how Alison talked about Delia's corporate experience and that all the resistance and resilience that she built up and that resistance that she faced when making suggestions, and how much that has truly impacted on her ability to do what they do in work today. They have a ton of expertise in their field. Barney's experience, Alison's deep understanding of fashion and women's bodies and style. And did you love what they said about money and how they set their price? I found the way Delia spoke about being confident and asking for the price enlightening, and I have ordered my copy of the book, The Alter Ego Effect. I'll put the notes are in the show notes. I also love what Delia says about making decisions and not going back around and again, and just take the chance and try it out. It's one of the things that I see in business is that people make a decision and they go, oh, maybe I should think about this as well. And then maybe I should think about this as well. And sometimes we just need to make a decision and stop making lists and stop thinking about what we're going to do. Just move, make it, get on with it. Alison is truly wise with how to handle comments and feedback from people. And did you love what she said about Delia getting feedback? I think I'm a bit like Delia, always asking others for questions. Anyway, I've listened to this interview a few times. You know that I love to do this as I'm preparing to put it together. And I keep hearing new wisdom. So maybe this episode will turn out to be one of your favorites as well. If you need help with how to start this business up for yourself, shoot me an email, ingrid@healthynumbers.com.au. In fact, any help you need, just ask. For everyone listening, whether this is your first episode or you have been with us for some time, I truly believe that whatever it is you're dreaming about can become real. These podcasts are designed to inspire, educate, and inform about what it takes to start, create, and grow a business of your own. If you're enjoying these episodes and you enjoyed this story, please feel free to share with a friend or a colleague or someone you know who just might appreciate listening to what Delia and Alison have to say. Make it easy to have all the latest episodes by subscribing to the podcast. As always, I say ideas without action, well, that's what they are. They're ideas. What action are you inspired to take today? Till the next time, thanks for listening.